esteemed guests to this function, members of Pune International Center, enthusiastic attendees from Pune, a very warm welcome and good afternoon to one and all. नमस्कार पुणे. तुमचे आमच्या या पुण्यभूमीत खूप खूप मनापासून स्वागत. इंटरनॅशनल सेंटर ऑफ पुणे, पुणे इंटरनॅशनल सेंटरच्या वतीने मी डॉक्टर संगीता काळे तुमचे सर्वांचे या पुस्तक प्रकाशन सोहळ्याला स्वागत करते. पुस्तकाचे नाव आहे द मेकिंग ऑफ हिरो, म्हणजेच हिरोची यशोगाथा. आय एम डॉक्टर संगीता काळे फ्रॉम पुणे इंटरनॅशनल सेंटर. आय वर्क एज अ प्रोफेसर इन फिजिक्स at Defense Institute of Advanced Technology, which is a university supported by DRDO, Government of India. I also work as Director of Policy and Planning at DIIT and co-director on my own startup, Navyukti Innovations Private Limited, which is incubated in DIIT. We all have gathered here for this wonderful launch of Marathi edition of an extremely popular book, The Making of Hero. This book was launched in 2020, and within first few weeks itself, it topped the Nielsen top book sales ranking, and it remained there for couple of months. पुणे हे विद्येचे माहेरघर आहे असं म्हणतात, आणि पुणे इंटरनॅशनल सेंटर हा पुण्यातलाच एक वैचारिक ग्रुप आहे. मीनिंग पुणे हॅज ऑलवेज बीन अ सिटी ऑफ लर्निंग, स्कॉलरशिप, व्हॅल्यूज, एनलाइटन्ड थिंकिंग अँड ॲक्शन. The city today boasts of presence of thought leaders from all walks of life, be it art, culture, education, law, science, engineering, technology, politics, trade, and so on and so forth. PIC provides a meeting point for all such great minds, a place where, in an intellectually stimulating and peaceful environment, enlightened discussions and debates can be held about the future of this great city, this great country, and of course, indeed the world. PIC has several verticals and multiple activities such as seminars, conferences, debates, discussion forums, writing policy papers, etc., which are conducted under different verticals: energy environment, social innovation, entrepreneurship development, national security, climate change, Asia economic dialogues, PIC Adda are few of the very popular verticals which are active throughout the year at PIC. They create knowledge-based and intellectually stimulating, document-free base for every citizen of Pune and of the world. We have around 400 eminent personalities from Pune who are a part of PIC community, and the number is continuously increasing. The details of PIC you can see, of course, at puneinternationalcenter.org. वर्ष 2020 मध्ये प्रसिद्ध झालेलं एक अतिशय उत्तम पुस्तक, द मेकिंग ऑफ हिरो, Four Brothers, Two Wheels, and a Revolution That Shaped India. या पुस्तकाची मराठी आवृत्ती आपण आज इनॉग्रेट किंवा ओपनिंग प्रोग्राम करणार आहोत. This book is written by Mr. Sunil Munjal, son of Mr. Brij Mohan Lal Munjal, who takes us through a wonderful journey of his father and his brothers to build a vast empire of Hero Cycles, Hero Motocorp, and Hero Enterprise. As it got published in 2020, the book has become one of the most popular and widely read books written within the first few days itself, and within the first few months, Nielsen top book sales ranking, it had topped it, and it remained there for a couple of months. The book has got multiple awards, including the 2020 Tata Literature Life Business Book Award. It is a wonderful read for any student, professional, a business person, and startup entrepreneur, and to anyone who wants to achieve a big dream in their lifetime. This book goes deep inside the family spirit that brought employees, customers, channel partners, suppliers, local communities together to create success, welfare, and well-being for millions over the past multiple decades. It's a rare story that proves how principle-driven organization can create exceptional value for the society. The author, Mr. Sunil Munjal, who is amongst us today, is the chairman of Hero Enterprise. He is also the chairman of Board of Governors of Doon School. He is a founder of India's Serendipity Arts Festival as well. He is the youngest son of Mr. Brij Mohan Lal Munjal. In 2014, he has formed a university, BML Munjal University, and he works as the chancellor of this university as well. Undoubtedly, he has been the best person to write this book, and it is not a surprise that the book has been a big hit. On this Marathi book release event, we have also arranged an intellectually stimulating panel discussion, which will follow the big inauguration event. And for this, the dais will be shared by extremely noted personalities in and around Pune. We have Dr. Abhay Firodia, Chairman, Force Motors, an Indian multinational automotive manufacturing company based in Pune. He is also the chairman of Oriental Research Institute, which is an institute well known in the country for its collection of old Sanskrit and Prakrit manuscripts. He has a core touch of Pune. Mr. Sanjiv Bajaj, chairman and managing director of Bajaj Finserv, a group company of all financial services businesses of Bajaj Group. He is also the past president of Confederation of Indian Industries (CII) for 2022-23. Though a student of Harvard Business School, he has his roots deeply fixed in Pune, and he is an alumnus of COEP Pune University. We have Ms. Namita Thapar. She is India's leading businesswoman and executive director of Emcure Pharmaceuticals, an Indian multinational pharmaceutical company based in Pune, Maharashtra. She is one of the most popular judges of the popular TV show The Shark Tank India. She is the author of her book Dolphin and the Shark: The Lessons in Stories on Entrepreneurship. It's published recently in 2022. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Parikshit Luthra of CNBC TV 18. Mr. Parikshit is a deputy editor and bureau chief CNBC TV 18. We of course have with us Ms. Meena Shete Shambhu, who has translated the wonderful book into Hero Chi Yashogatha. I welcome all the guests and panelists for this event. I also welcome other dignitaries to this program, like Mrs. Leena Poonawalla, Mr. Firoz Poonawalla, Mr. Arvind Goyal, Ms. Gauri Kirloskar and Atul Kirloskar, Sanjay Kirloskar, Pratima Kirloskar ma'am, Mr. Shrikant Badve, and many other. I may have missed out a few of them as well. To start this program, let us have a glimpse of the journey of Hero Enterprise through this short video clip, The Making of Hero. May I request the clip to be played, please?
From the bylanes of Kamalia and the rugged landscapes of Quetta, they escaped to India with little more than the shirts on their backs. In the partition-ravaged cities of Amritsar, Agra and Delhi, 4 of the 6 Munjal brothers, Dayanand, Satyanand, Brij Mohanlal and Om Prakash, built their business part by part. Armed with nothing but self-belief, the brothers began with trading and then manufacturing bicycle parts, which soon evolved into the production of bicycles. For post-independence India, the Hero bicycle gave wings to the aspirations of the common man. By 1986, 30 years after its inception, Hero Cycles became the largest bicycle maker in the world. In the next 15 years, the motorcycle venture, Hero Honda, repeated the feat. And both pole positions are held firmly even today. Hero's story is about humble beginnings, the refugee entrepreneurial spirit, hard work, and zeal. It looks at how 4 brothers with little formal education created a world-class enterprise. This is the incredible tale of a principle-driven organization that created exceptional value for a society that desperately needed transportation. How did 4 brothers with distinct personalities work like a cohesive unit and build a manufacturing behemoth? How did they synchronize their strengths? How did they resolve their differences, if any? The story goes deep inside the family spirit, the parivar, that brought together employees, customers, channel partners, suppliers and local communities to create success, welfare and well-being for millions. This is the making of Hero. 4 brothers, 2 wheels, and a revolution that shaped India.
Thank you for this fantastic and extremely inspiring movie. I'm sure each one of us would agree that the willpower can create wonders, not only to us as an individual, but also revolutionize and literally mobilize the entire country. May I now request our esteemed dignitaries to come up on the dais, please. Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, Mr. Abhay, Dr. Abhay Firodia, Mr. Sunil Bajaj, Ms. Namita Thapar. Kindly come up on the stage, please. Thank you all. I request all the dignitaries to inaugurate an unveiling of the book, please. I would also like to invite Mrs. Leela Poonawalla, Mr. Arvind Goel, Gauri Kirloskar ma'am, Atul Kirloskar, Sanjay Kirloskar. Kindly come up on the stage for unveiling of the book. Mr. Shrikant Badwe, Mr. Alok Kirloskar and Rama Kirloskar also, please.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, for that beautiful introduction. And many of you don't know Sangeeta, but Sangeeta is a scientist at DRDO. She's into nanotechnology, semiconductors, critical technologies, and whatnot. So someone really we should interact with more. But let's bring our focus back on the book today. And this is a book, as Sangeeta said, which is really a must for all students, anyone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur. We've all seen this book being launched in different versions. It's won a lot of critical acclaim. It's being launched in Marathi today. Very soon we're going to see a Gujarati version, perhaps towards the end of the month, and more launches in other languages. Now, why is it important? Now, this is the story of 4 brothers, and it's a story that goes back 7 decades. It began in Kamalia in Pakistan, and it's a story of grit, determination, of a lot of hardships this family suffered over 7 decades, but they emerged victorious. It's about a man, Brijmohan Lal Munjal, someone who was really ahead of his times, a visionary, an early adopter of technology, who knew that you can do this much on your own, but if you want scale, if you want to go global, you have to have those partnerships abroad. So he took that first flight in his family. He went to Germany, he went to France, he went to Europe, he went to England, forged those partnerships, brought the right machinery, which helped the Hero Motor Group really achieve scale. And I'm talking about Hero Motor Corp, which has its origins in the 1980 when the Hero Honda JV was formed. But the history really goes back 30 years before that as well with Hero Cycles. As Mr. Munjal told me a little while back, it was in 1950s when Hero Bicycles was set up. Before that, they were into cycle parts in Pakistan. Mr. Munjal was someone who really built this company on strong family values, very strong partnerships with his dealers, with his supply chain partners. And we would all agree that there would be several people in this audience, several entrepreneurs in the Pimpri-Chinchwad area, the Chakan area, many of those in the automotive industry who've somehow been touched by him. So I'm not an expert. I'm not going to say more. You've got some fantastic panelists here, someone who've really touched India's growth story very, very closely over the years. People like Sanjiv Bajaj, Sunil Munjal, Mr. Abhay Firodia, Namita Thapar, all of them very closely linked to Pune, to Maharashtra, and India's growth story over the last few decades. This year is very special for the Hero Group. It's the birth centenary of Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal. So let's play this special video on this occasion. Mr. Munjal would have been very happy and proud of where Hero as a group is today, Hero Motorcorp is today as well. But what I was saying was, today Hero as a group has diversified interests. And I remember seeing a picture of Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal, Mr. Munjal, and I saw this at the Harley Davidson launch recently. Him in the United States with his wife on a Harley Davidson motorcycle. I guess it must have been his dream at some point to be building Harley Davidson motorcycles in India. And that's exactly what's happening. Just a few days ago, they launched a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and they will be a manufacturer for Harley Davidson motorcycles in India. And today, Hero MotoCorp is into electric vehicles, and the company has touched all our lives. Who over here has not had the opportunity to ride a Hero cycle or enjoyed a ride on a CD100 or a Splendor for that matter, or the Charisma, if I were to speak about the younger generation as well. But today what we're talking is about some of the entrepreneurial experiences we're drawing from the legacy of Dr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal, entrepreneurship then and now, what's changed, what's not. Mr. Munjal, I'll begin with you. He was a man who was extremely determined, had a very clear vision. He knew what he had to do. He built very strong partnerships. And he was strongly backed by his family. Whatever he did was a collective decision of the family. Tell us what worked for him. When it comes to defining his entrepreneurial fundamentals, how would you define it?
Thank you. Thank you, Parikshit, and thank you all for coming in for what we consider a special occasion. And if you don't mind, before we do, may I acknowledge two individuals here. The publisher of this book, Mr. Vikas Rakeja, is here. May I just ask him to stand for a moment? Where is he? You're there at the back. Thank you. As is Meena Shetty, the lady who's actually penned this down in this language. This book I wrote originally was in English. So she's done the translation. If you just stand for a moment, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, what worked for him? I think it was 2 or 3 different things. One was, and this is true of most refugees in the world, because when you lose everything, you have a point to prove to yourselves first and then to anybody else. But you also need to be able to provide for your family. So I think part of this was the drive to restart from scratch and build something. The other thing I think that worked for him was very sound but very simple principles. The founding principles of the family, because the business started with just 2 brothers and then the third one, then the fourth one, were the principles and the behavior of just the brothers. That became the company's culture. In the early days, it was natural because it was a small number. As it grew, we kind of organized that into philosophical statements, and any new person who was being hired would actually be interviewed against that criteria, and then it became part of the induction document as well. And these were, frankly, like motherhood statements almost. First, that the most important asset that we have is people. It is also the only asset which appreciates with time and experience. Every other asset is depreciating, whether you make the best buildings or the best technologies, everything else depreciates. The second is building and retaining relationships. As you mentioned yourself, they built some pretty unique relationships right from the early days. We now have, and we have some of our dealers here today, we have many organizations and families who are now working with us second, third, and even fourth generation. And I think there is something to be said for that, especially in a world where we try and make short order of everything quickly and move on to the next thing. The next was fairness, to try and be fair to all concerned all the time. And I can tell you, this is an easy statement to make. It's not always easy to do. Because when you try and push this, even within the organization, sometimes people say, why do we have to be fair to the other guy? We are actually dealing with him. So why is it necessary? The next one was care and concern for the environment on 2 types. One was the physical environment. So things which have become fashionable today, like sustainability, etc., were practiced very early on. 40 years ago or 45 years ago, we had put effluent treatment plants, and I'm going back to the Hero Cycles days now, and putting green plants inside and outside the factories. Second was the environment of communities living and working around us. So a lot of work got done right from the get-go, from the early days, with people around us, really as a way to say thank you, realizing how fortunate we were to have got these opportunities. So this is the least you can do is reach out to others. And the last, I think, in some ways, which was the most important, was he and his brothers did all of this with humility, with the acceptance that no one of us has a monopoly on good ideas and the ability to create anything on our own. There is always going to be the entire team that's working, which is why the word family and parivar was used over and over and over again, anytime you go within the organization or around it.
Right. And one thing I observed while reading the book, and that was that each brother was very clear and comfortable with his role in the family business. If there was one person going out, dealing with dealers, building those partnerships, there was one person dealing with suppliers, one person focused on vision, and that was Mr. Brij Mohan Lal Munjal. I also remember how there was a robbery in the homes of one of the dealers, and the brothers actually put that equivalent amount in the dealer's account so that he wouldn't suffer losses and he would be able to continue that kind of business. I'm sure there are many more stories that our panelists have with us, but Mr. Firodia, I'd like to come to you. When you started off your career, give us a sense of where are the areas where you could see convergences with Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal. Those times were really different. There was no access to technology. There was license Raj. There was a long waiting period for everything. For a Chetak scooter, you might have to wait for 15 to 16 years. What were those times like? How was it to be an entrepreneur at that time?
Well, thank you, Parikshit. It's working? I think I really have to start in the 50s. That was the time when automotive industry was already established in India. Most people don't understand this. But in 1958, both Premier Automobiles and Hindustan Motors made more vehicles than Nissan Motors did. That was the size of the automobile industry. But automobile industry was deliberately, systematically stifled in India by the Nehruvian socialist policies which clamped down not so much on industry as much on industrialists. And the whole attempt was to usurp what they have. There was even a time later during, let's say, post-emergency, where the government wanted to nationalize the automobile industry. So you have to look at that period where there was so much social hostility, political hostility to enterprise. As you said, there was no supplier industry. The channel was small, new. A few people who were your relatives or friends became your dealers. And volumes were small. The key issue here is that government gave you permission to make a limited number of vehicles. For instance, in Force Motors, which was then Bajaj Tempo, our license was to make 1,000 three-wheelers per year. And they demanded that you must have 80% local content to start with. Now, this means that the manufacturing process has no scale. It is more like a workshop. And the entrepreneurs of that time had to struggle with a hostile government, with scarcity of raw material, with evolving very militant unions, and the fragility of the business was great. So that was the condition. In the 80s, when the so-called change in the Indian automobile industry came and the government brought in Maruti, there are many number of reasons why Maruti came in, the least of which is that it was meant to modernize the Indian industry. We'll leave that. At that time, the people who got licenses, and they had licenses to produce, like Hero got the license, Kinetic Honda got the license, so many others. Vehicle manufacturers came, LCV manufacturers came. But by then, the scale restriction was begun to be lifted. What Mr. Munjal did, as different from what the people before had to do, was in the bicycle industry, the structure is very special. Everybody makes a part. Somebody makes a rim, somebody makes a spoke, somebody makes an axle, and the aggregators aggregate this. What Mr. Munjal did, what Brijmohan Lal Munjal did, was to nurture this industry, to build relations, so they were able to build scale, because there were 5 axle manufacturers and 6 rim manufacturers. So they could build scale. And bicycle had no restriction. You could build any number you want because you weren't building, somebody else was building. You were aggregating, selling. They were able to build scale. And in that, Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal's and his brother's skill at getting people together was very important. So the focus shifted from having to deal with technology for small volumes to dealing with large volumes with distributed manufacturing. And this was something which was a special quality of Mr. Munjal. His having done that in Hero Cycles, he was able to understand the dynamics of building scale. And he built it. And you saw what happened to Hero Honda at that time. So the important thing was that he was able to take people together, build scale without really getting into too much trouble by way of investment. Uh, the special skills that I saw he had, I think were extraordinarily important.
So I read an instance in
Yeah.
the book how the family actually got imported parts and got the Ramgadias to actually replicate those parts because nobody was making them in India. Did you have to do something similar?
Most of the automobile companies in India started using imported technology. The scene is totally different today. Whether you look at Bajaj, whether you look at Tata, they're all making vehicles which are of Indian design, Indian origin. But that was a different time. The 40s, where there was no industry, there was no design competence, there was no knowledge, there was no channel. There was just guts, and there was aspiration, and there was commitment. Later, this question of make it in India by stopping, that is, import substitution started. And technology was absorbed by Indians very well. It was absorbed by the entrepreneurs, it was absorbed by the small scale industry, it was absorbed by the engineers, by the workers. Today, if you look at Pune, there are probably a million people capable of working in any engineering industry. So this evolved over a period of time. It's not just a question of technology, but the ability to function in a technological environment. And Mr. Munjal's role, I particularly feel, was very important in recognizing ahead of time two things: motorcycles is the future, not scooters. And second, build scale in the most efficient manner you can. And those are what really led him to create this huge mammoth of an organization.
Right. And when I think you had gone to sign the JV, I think Pavan Munjal had also gone with him, and Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal was in Japan. At that time, they were thinking they're going to go in for a JV for scooters, but it ended up being a JV for motorcycle, even though they panicked at that point in time. They said, Chalo karte hain, dekhenge kya hota hai. But Sanjiv, if I can get you in, Hero and the Bajaj Group, they've been the fiercest rivals, fiercest competitors over the years. Hero was not successful with scooters. Bajaj, in a way, was late to the party when it came to 100cc motorcycles. Today, Bajaj Auto is the largest exporter of motorcycles from India. Your father always called Brijmohan Lal Munjal his guru. What were some of the entrepreneurial lessons that you picked up from Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal, or your father wanted to replicate in his business?
So, the first thing that's important to recognize is that whether it's Hero or Bajaj, both are world leaders today. One may be number one, one may be number three. One is ahead in something, one is ahead in
and
the
both
other
very
thing.
closely connected
But,
with the growth story of India.
Tremendously connected and both tremendous examples of Indian entrepreneurism. So I think that's something that's great to recognize. I met Brijmohan Lalji a few times, always at a CI event or at some of the other social event, not too many times. But like you can see right through the reading of the book, what came out right away was his affection. The first time I met him, I went gingerly. My father introduced me to him. Like with an elderly person, you would bend and offer your pranam. But he hugged me, and he hugged me as though he was not hugging a stranger. And I think that was the character of the person. And that's why you see through the book also, relationship comes before everything else for him and for the family. And that came out very clearly. I did not get to spend enough time with him to learn what I'm sure would have been great learnings. But I did get a little bit more time with my own father. And as I read through the book, and as you may know, a book on my father just got released also, unfortunately, just a month after he passed away last year. But whether it is from Kamalia to Amritsar or to Ludhiana, or it is from Sikar to Wardha to Mumbai and Pune, there are
two parallel stories. As I was reading through that story and whatever little bit I know of the Bajaj history before me and from the time that I've been here, you felt like these were two parallel lives. And while a lot was different, a lot was similar. The entrepreneurial zeal was similar, the ambition was similar, the family relationships were similar, how people work together, how you institutionalized institutions, how you focused on excellence, how you focused on scale, and in this case, very similar industries. And even today, if you see, while the auto industry is predominant, actually over here now, financial services is a little bigger, but that's only a phase in time. The great thing is that the entrepreneurial zeal, that risk-taking ability, is what stood out very clearly in those times. But I also believe that for entrepreneurs today, there is so much more that today's world offers you. You, of course, need that entrepreneurial zeal. You, of course, need that ability to take risk. But look at the access to capital, alternate forms of capital. And Sunil is one who plays a significant role in the entire startup world in India, is with people like him and with so many other private equity venture capital groups. An entrepreneur today, and you can see that with so many examples around us, can build a top-class company. Earlier, either you were part of a larger family, you were associated with a multinational, or you waited months and months outside a bank branch to get a loan. So I think access to capital has made a very big difference. Second is just the availability of professional guidance. That's making a very big difference. Otherwise, earlier, you went into the family, and of course, you learned a lot from the family. But I think there's a lot more that is happening today professionally. And I would also point out one more thing, that in the past, you started a business in your city, whether it was in Amritsar, whether it was Ludhiana, whether it was in Pune, and you grew over a period of time. Today, you can see these startups within 3 years are all over the country, if not all over the world. So the global access also, and maybe a little bit the digital world as a result of that, has dramatically changed the entrepreneurial opportunity today. And that's why even in our own work environments, we try to create that environment where for at least our top 20% of employees, they work in an environment which is as entrepreneurial as can be.
Right. You know, on a lighter note, all of us know Mr. Rahul Bajaj, and he was very outspoken. He didn't hold back his words. If he wanted to criticize anyone or any decision of the government, he really spoke his mind. You know, and everyone called him the spine of the Indian industry. So, Sanjiv, the question that I want to ask you: do you think an entrepreneur today can be so outspoken as Mr. Rahul Bajaj was? Politically incorrect, also at times, if desired?
So, different people communicate in different ways. For him at his time, situation was the same as it is for us in our time. Because times change, but situations change as well. I believe it's very important for each one of us to stand for first what is right for our country, and then what is right for our industry or for our business. There are ways of doing it. My father was very aggressive in the way he communicated, but he was also a great listener. And he was willing to accept a point of view different from his own if you could argue it out with him. And the interesting thing is, this was not just his facade when he was out with business or when he was out with politicians. This was him every day. So we have been battle-hardened from our young days at the dining table.
And dealing with the consequences of what he said.
And dealing with the consequences and learning how to defend your point of view.
No, that's great. And great learning for entrepreneurs as well. But we have a Shark Tank judge right here, and she's going to give the verdict on all the entrepreneurs here. So, Namita, you've heard everyone. Give us your verdict. You've dealt with so many entrepreneurs. You're one of the biggest investors on Shark Tank India as well. What do you think entrepreneurs of today really need to do for the future? I did speak to an industry veteran some time back, and he said that people today like a lot of change, youngsters like a lot of change, disruption, but ठहराव नहीं है. So do you feel that there is something that is lacking in entrepreneurs of today, something that they can learn from the likes of Brijmohan Lal Munjal, Mr. Firodia, Rahul Bajaj?
So I think between season 1 and season 2, I must have seen over 400 pitches, which is a very large number. And as of today, I have over 40 startups in my portfolio. And some things that are the same is what we just spoke about right now. Mr. Munjal spoke about grit and just that perseverance. When you speak to my father, who's a first generation entrepreneur, he'll say, my life story is just a story full of failures. So, how do you deal with that amount of failure and still have that grit? You spoke about people, right? And how relationships are so critical. Parikshit, you spoke about that lovely story about the dealer and how they put in their personal money. That's empathy, right? So, I mean, some of these skills that we see in, your father or Mr. Rahul or my father or even the youngsters who are as young as in their early 20s who come to Shark Tank, those fundamentals don't change. Those are some essentials that you need a founder to have. Again, the fundamentals about the basics of a business, path to profitability. That's where the Terra is a big question mark, because the access to funding wasn't as easy in the generations prior as it is today. And that access to funding creates its own set of opportunities, which are phenomenal because it's democratized entrepreneurship, right? It's not the prerogative of a family business. Even the common man, woman can dream big. So the funding has been a huge opportunity, but it's been a huge challenge because we are seeing some insane valuations with some terrible losses, cash flow constraints. And I think the funding winter that has been going on for the last 2 years is truly a reality check. And is bringing some of that terror that you spoke about of let's get back to the basics. Let's focus not just on the crazy growth numbers, but also on the cash flow, the profitability. So I think if I were to summarize on what's not changed are the fundamentals that an entrepreneur needs to have in terms of skills. What's changed is the access to capital. What's changed is, like he rightly said, better policy in place. You have UPI. I mean, look at the kind of digital gateways. I don't remember paying with Google Pay or going and using those QR codes. It was a kind of learning for me. I felt so ignorant and technically illiterate just doing that. And that's, again, changed the entire startup ecosystem. But one area that I find very funny, and because all of us here are from family businesses, is that family businesses still make up 70% of our GDP. And we're the third largest country when it comes to family business. Yet when I was a shark on the show and the only non-founder, my biggest role is Papa Ki Pari, nepotism. And, we get called that a lot. Of course, we don't really care about it. After a point, you truly develop that thick skin. But when you look at those family businesses, Sanjiv made a very good point that you really need to bring the professionals in. He's done a good job of having professional CEOs in place, which did not happen in the past. Right? You really have to bring in those systems, the scale. One of the points you brought about is the roles and responsibilities were clear in the four brothers. But I see a lot of family businesses today where that's not prevalent. The succession planning, clear roles and responsibilities, governance, the board meetings not just being a checklist, the professional and family member balance, that is still a big gap in a lot of businesses. So I think that is a big area that needs to change. A second area that needs to change is, I know Sanjiv does a lot of digital stuff in his companies because we talk a lot. Ather, that's all about investing in startups to really get ahead. At Emcure, we've invested in a lot of startups to bring prickless testing for anemia or to bring a pocket-sized ECG device so that it becomes affordable in the interiors. But not a lot of family businesses are really adopting startups and technology at the pace that they need to. So I think some of that, Parikshit, needs to change and needs to change fast if we need to become relevant, stay relevant, and compete with all these 400 pitches that I saw on Shark Tank.
Very interesting. Namita, I'll use your mic. But some great tips there, Namita, and especially when it comes to the future of family businesses, because we're seeing so many changes in corporate governance. And many family promoters stepping aside for professional CEOs. Mr. Munjal, I'll put that question to you and also Mr. Firodia. What is the future or the mantra for the success of a family business today?
Actually, I'm coming from an event only last evening where I was talking about transition and succession in family-owned businesses. As Namita just said, the largest value, employment, even tax generation comes from family-owned businesses. 300 of the top 500 companies in India are family-owned right now. Interestingly, I'll give you some of the maths here. 1/5 of the assets, 1/4 of their top line, and 1/3 of the reserves and profits come from these companies. So if you see, they're actually more efficient, by the way. That's why I read out the numbers for you. So it is actually very, very important. There's a lot of research to show, there's a common sayings of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, that by the third generation, most, actually a large number, 94% of family-owned businesses destroy themselves. There's a saying in Ireland which says that the first generation buys, the second builds, the third sells or destroys, and the fourth has to start begging again. So what is important is for family-owned businesses to understand 2 or 3 things. One is the distinction between ownership and management. That is critical. If you just realize that my value and wealth lies in my business, so there's somebody who can run this business better than me or my brother or my kid or my daughter, that's what you should be doing. I think that's one fundamental value of business which is getting lost somewhere, because the impression very often is, if you have the same last name as mine, you are entitled to this. And that entitlement is a very dangerous term. It sets the wrong set of expectations. So we are not really demanding performance, and merit then gets given the go-by. I think that's one aspect. Second is, as family businesses grow, it's important the philosophy of the family needs to be transmitted as a culture of the organization. Otherwise, you're at odds with each other. Because as it happens, a family and business are an oxymoron. Families are socialist by their very nature. They want everyone to be treated similarly and equally. Whereas the business is completely capitalist, as it should be. It's focusing on improving efficiency, profits, but it's also important, and I think this is an important compact between business, industry, and civil society that needs to change. It needs to play a bigger role outside of itself than it's been playing over the last 100 years, I think. Because you're seeing this disparity in incomes that has got created by this wonderful market economy model that we followed is causing friction and is causing deep disappointment, and is also making lots of people angry. There are businesses now through CSR, many companies are doing an amazing job in education and healthcare and gender issues, clean drinking water. There's just so many different things. And I think this is because the businesses have learned how to create efficiency, how to build productivity, how to get good outcomes based on whatever other resources available. And I think to deploy that knowledge in the social sector is also very important, because the normal understanding is social sector does not need to be efficient. And I think that's not fair to the sector. It's not fair to society. So the role of business, I think, is beyond business as well. And I know many of us feel, many in business feel that even the CSR was forced upon us. But on hindsight, and by the way, I was one of those who are arguing with government on behalf of CII and industry that you guys should not do this, because there are many families who do spend more than 2% already. They don't like to make the announcements, and the others might fudge the numbers. But I have to admit I was wrong. There's a lot of good coming in. Not all of it is efficient, but there's a lot of good happening there. So I think both, on the one point that Abhay made earlier, Indian industry has got to be globally competitive in every aspect of the world. And at the same time, reach out beyond itself.
Right, and we saw that, didn't we, with Mr. Brijmohan as well? How he always focused on quality, a lot of testing, on sustainability, even in those times of hardships. Mr. Firodia, coming to you, when do you think an entrepreneur should take a decision that he now needs to step aside to give somebody else a role for the future? And when it comes to family owned businesses, what is the difference between, say, 50 to 60 years ago and now as to how a family run business should really function, and when should you really hand over to a professional CEO?
2 or 3 points. Let me say one of the ways to keep the family business healthy is to keep the family small. That is something which is very important. And family doesn't mean just the number of children you have. Family means an extended family. In India, your cousin is family, your cousin's brother-in-law is your family. And one has to be clear about this, that yes, when you are in business, the stake in the business should remain limited to a few people and not very widely spread unless they are normal shareholders. That's perfectly kosher. Second point is the value system. Why is the Indian business community successful? I mean, you see this all over the world. In America, in Europe, Indians are heading businesses. And I think there are three very important elements to this, which are very endemic to Indian society and therefore to Indian families. First is education. I think the emphasis among business families on educating the next generation, not just technically, but in leadership roles, is very important. So, education plays a very crucial role in the success of the family. The second one is enterprise. Enterprise is something, as Sanjiv was saying, that he had to argue with Rahul at the dining table about how it should be done and how it shouldn't be done. Well, that's education in enterprise. Every business family has that. Sunil said in the beginning that the four brothers would work together, there would be differences, but they would work them out. So, this aspect of enterprise, inculcating the enterprise in the family, is a very important aspect. And the third, and possibly the most important aspect, is ethics. Is education, enterprise, and ethics. If you can combine the three, then you have a very solid, successful, uh, potential configuration to play with. Now, how do you inculcate ethics? And this is where you look at some of the leaders who have created big enterprises out of very small beginnings, like Mr. Munjal. They have set the example of ethics for the relationships in the family, for attributing the benefits of the success, for giving power. And it is a combination of these three that makes the family business successful. One thing I very much relate to the success of India to Mr. Munjal's life, that is that by the time he really came into his own, which was when he moved from bicycle, didn't move out, but moved from bicycle to motorized two-wheelers, was the time a change in the Indian regulatory environment was beginning to happen. And he has proved beyond doubt that the Indian entrepreneur, if allowed the facilities, access to capital, the freedom to go into different businesses, can create great wealth. And this aspect, one has to relate to what's happening today in India. If you see today in India, the real engines of growth of the Indian economy are private enterprise. By private enterprise, it just doesn't mean a private limited company, but a company headed by, run by members of a family, and where the leadership will succeed into the next generation. So, a lot of people don't look at it to say that, okay, before 1990, we had a Hindu rate of growth. That's nonsense. It was the socialist rate of growth. It restricted the role of private enterprise. And when that role became more accessible, people like Bijmohan Lalji were able to create wonders. So that's a very important thing. Family on the one hand, environment on the other hand. But you should be able to take advantage of that environment, and you must build first the family. The family is strong, business can be strong. Family is not strong, business won't be strong. So you have to build both.
Right, Namita?
A very important E that you missed out. But I think being a second generation, I felt the pain. And I think a lot of second, third generation, empowering. I think, in spite of having the education, I was a CA, MBA, I'd worked abroad for 6 years. But when a second or third generation joins, does the father, is there enough of letting go of the ego and letting us fail and empowering us? I think the empowerment is a big gap.
The situation is arisen where the older generation has to be empowered by the younger
But Namita, asking, following up from there, and when it comes to women entrepreneurs especially, how difficult has been that journey towards diversity, also making your voice heard in the boardroom? What's your advice to women entrepreneurs who are just starting off?
I think you've taken a big leap here of having one. I mean, that's a good ratio. 25%. that's much better than ratios in other parts of India. But, if you look at entrepreneurs and you look globally, it's not just in India, only 2.3% of female-led founders get funded. Now, it can be a whole different discussion on why, and I've done a lot of research, so we will not get into that depth. But obviously, if these are the kind of numbers we're talking about, and I'm a healthcare company, World Economic Forum did a survey of 156 countries, and India was 154th, bottom two in women's health. I can rattle off so many statistics around women's health that you're going to feel dizzy after I'm done. But the point is, you look at any statistics, you look at women workforce participation, you look at women-led funding. There is a need for a lot of women like me to speak up. And Mr. Munjal was telling me there's some communication consultants who train you on how to deal with being tactful and deal with difficult people.
People you don't like.
Yeah. But I think that's a whole different training that's needed for women to really lean in, to speak up, to normalize taboos.
Yeah, but this is an important point.
So that is important.
It's an important point you raised, Parikshit. And in our investment office that Sanjiv referred to, we see 80 to 100 deals a month. And it's both a pity and a shame that and we actually make an extra effort to find where you can find female entrepreneurs. And we have actually even gone and put money in funds, which we don't like to do nowadays, which are women-focused funds. They focus on female entrepreneurs or female management teams or a majority female management teams. And I think we are missing out the next wave of growth for India. One of the things that needs to happen is to involve or get women into the mainstream because they are the much smarter half. The reality is their ability to do multitasking is much better than men, and their ability to bring empathy to any task is much better than men. So at this moment, I think we are missing out. We are actually shooting ourselves in the foot. And maybe early days, but I have great hope that this is our next big wave of growth for India as more and more females come into the mainstream, into key positions and key roles in economy and in the industry.
You couldn't be more right, Mr. Munjal. I was recently speaking to an air marshal in charge of personnel and recruitment in the Air Force, and I asked him, what do women bring to the Air Force? And he said, balanced decision making. So that's what we need in our boardrooms as well. Mr. Bajaj, my final question to you, before we open the questions to the audience, Please get your questions ready. We're going to ask you to stand up and ask those questions. We'll put one final question to Sanjiv Bajaj. Namita had spoken about cost efficiency, how we've seen a funding winter. Many startups have had a very hard time. Many have closed down also after COVID-19. Many of the models, product models, did not really work. And we saw in the book that Mr. Sunil Kant has written about Mohanlal Bajaj, how there were brothers who used to travel in third class, who used to live in very small hotels just to make sure that they save up on costs. Now, those might be very, very extreme cases, might be individual choices, but how important is cost efficiency and frugality in times that we live in today, especially when you're starting off in a business?
It is something that's important at every time, every part of the journey of building a business, because every rupee that you save goes either to your customer, to your employee, or to the shareholder. And companies that are successful for the long term are all frugal companies. You may see an Infosys, you may see an Amazon. These are huge companies, but they're exceedingly frugal. And by being frugal does not mean being silly. It is intelligently removing waste. The whole Japanese system of lean manufacturing was about removing waste from each part of the manufacturing process. So this is something that I believe this is something our startups understand. The challenge that they're facing is that there is a dark side to private equity, which and it's structural in the model, which is that equity, that money eventually belongs to a set of investors who want their money back in a defined period of time. And in that period of time, when you have a venture capital or a private equity investor that is funding 20, 30, 40, 50 companies, he or she knows that every one of them is not going to be successful. So the few that they see can be successful, they chase size so that they can take it to a particular valuation, exit, and make money for their investors. Unfortunately, what that does is brings a whole additional set of pressures on the founder who may not have the capability of building a business out as fast, may not have the management systems, is not able to build a profitable model. And that's what you're seeing at the negative result of that is what you're seeing at this point of time.
Right. No, thank you. And I'm sure this is a masterclass for all entrepreneurs wanting to start up. So let's get these questions going. I hope you've been listening to this panel discussion. Otherwise, I'll start picking people in the audience. But yeah, we've got our first question here. The gentleman right in the middle in front. Do we have? All right, ma'am, we'll begin with you first. Can we give her the mic, please?
Thank you. My name is Arlene Modi, and I'm a founder of an NGO that works in villages in Shirur. And my comment is to Mr. Munjal. We bought 1,000 Hero bicycles to send girls to high school. My girls are now doctors, engineers, pharmacists, you name it. Thank you, Mr. Munjal, for giving us 2 wheels of change. Thank you very much. I said it was a comment.
Thank you so much for those remarks, ma'am.
Thanks so much for this panel. It's been very insightful, so learned a lot. So India actually today is at a great growth journey. You all spoke about access to capital and how that's really helping us today. Apart from that, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs has also given us a great growth forecast when it comes to 2047, 2057. So how does India kind of make the leap from today being an industrial superpower that maybe produces for the world to eventually become a superpower that produces global technology for the world?
Namita, you want to take that?
Innovation. Innovation is the only way. So for example, pharma industry started with just doing contract manufacturing. We're trying to move up the value chain. That is a one-word answer to your question in every aspect.
Right. Any more? Good, good. Please. So digital technology, we'll get you the mic. Let's get you the mic.
Digital, by my definition, I believe it's only 0 and 1. Either it's a true case or it's a false case. I mean, I don't understand digital, but how favorable results can you get from digital?
Mr. Bajaj, importance of digitization, I think in Bajaj Finserv, in the financial services, this is more important than ever.
So he's actually an old shareholder of ours.
Okay.
Good to see you again. If you just...
Me at all.
No. Why don't you see where your stock price has gone over the last 10 years? You'll know how much we are helping you and working for you, sir.
That is immaterial because these prices have no value.
Ah, okay. Then can you give them to me?
All right, sir, let me take that. So I think it is important for all of us to realize that technology is now a given. It's not an option any longer for us. And digitization is only one part of technology. Technology in all its manifestations and forms is coming. A large part of it is here, and a lot more is coming. So we have to figure out how do we learn to use it, adapt ourselves to it, and use it as a tool. Otherwise, we will get driven. That's important. It's every stage of technological change that has taken place on this planet over the last few millennia. The same thing has happened. There is a fear of change, which is a real fear, for good reason, because we do not know what's going to happen. But we also seen that every time, post having adapted to that change, we're able to use those tools well. It was a simple thing like a calculator was fearsome at one time, because the abacus is what was being used. Today, you're allowed to take computers and laptops into examinations. So it is coming at us like a wall because it's coming in every aspect of our lives. So the smart thing would be to quickly see what part is useful for me and how do I adapt. And by the way, this is going to keep on changing. It's not a single adaptation.
Right.
So our ability to absorb and use this has got to itself change constantly.
And that's what Mr. Brijmohan Lal Munjal also did, constantly adopting new technology, looking at the future. The lady in the red sari? Yes. Sorry, the green sari.
First of all, it was a pleasure listening to you all. Actually, being an electronics engineer, I just have one question. In this era of AI and this chat GPT that's happening all around, what is what does the industry, the top leaders in manufacturing, what do you think that what is going to change in the next 20 years in this era of AI and ChatGPT in the manufacturing sector?
So she's asking, you've got ChatGPT, you're talking about artificial intelligence. How is this going to change the manufacturing sector? How do you see the changes for the future?
Well, nobody really knows for sure. But let us be a little objective and say, what are the inputs you require for creating a great economy, a very successful society? Those are very clear. India has a lot of talent. That's a given. As Sunil said, technology is a given, talent is a given in India. You will not find more talented people anywhere else than in India. We are there. What is it we don't have? Two things. One, we psychologically as a nation were export negative, not enthusiastic. We were looking inward. In the last decade, slowly this has changed, and many people have contributed. Bajaj Auto has, Hero has, Kirloskar have. They have strong export and global ambition. This is very important if you want to be a global power. If you are not able to be successful abroad, you will never be a global power. So one aspect is this export competitiveness. Second aspect, which always when you speak to a meeting like this, people will say, yes, but karega kaun? and that is change the regulatory environment further. Why did India move from absolutely the socialist rate of growth to a reasonable rate of growth after 1991? Because at the central level, they liberalized. And you could, if you wanted to make 5 lakh motorcycles a month, you could. Earlier, you couldn't. So today, there is a crying need for regulatory reform of another kind, land. Have you tried to purchase land? I'm sure half the people sitting here have tried to purchase land in recent years. It's very, very difficult. Labor. You have this Mathadi Act in Pune. You can't get a more silly legislation where you have to pay what is almost a ransom for the sake of running your business. It has no logic. Now, these are obvious things, but people don't let go of this because the political and the bureaucratic system has vested interest in not changing for the more efficient. If you change for a more efficient system, they lose power, they lose money. So, to grow the next level, like what happened in 1991, what should happen now is that there needs to be a realization that you have to let the energies of the entrepreneurs free. By making more investment in public sector, nothing is going to happen. We're living in Pune, we know that Hindustan Antibiotics here has been closed for the last 20 years. It still has a colony, it still has labor. They are not able to get rid of it. Therefore, a reform in the approach to encourage enterprise is important. She spoke of innovation. Of course, she is right. But if enterprise is not allowed to grow, then how will you use your innovation? You need to be in a position where you can use these powers. May I say something in Marathi?
I wanted all of you to say something in Marathi actually, but yeah, please go ahead.
आजचा कार्यक्रम जो आहे तो ब्रिजमोहनलालजी मुंजाल यांच्यावर जे पुस्तक लिहिलं गेलेलं आहे त्या पुस्तकाचं मराठी भाषांतर याचं अनावरण करण्याकरता आहे. आपण महाराष्ट्रात राहतो, पुण्यात राहतो, पुण्याबद्दल आपल्याला अभिमान आहे, पण आपण सगळ्यांनी हे लक्षात ठेवायला पाहिजे असं मला मनापासून वाटतं की ब्रिजमोहनलालजी मुंजाल अत्यंत महान व्यक्ती होत्या. तुम्ही त्यांना भेटलं तर ते तुम्हाला असं कधी वाटलं नसतं की फार महान व्यक्ती आहे. अत्यंत सोज्वळ शांत प्रकारचं त्यांचं व्यक्तिमत्व होतं. परंतु त्यांनी आपल्या आयुष्यात जे केलं, जे पाकिस्तानहून एक रेफ्युजी म्हणून आले, काही नव्हतं, त्यातून त्यांनी मोठी इंडस्ट्री निर्माण केली. फार मोठी गोष्ट आहे. 20व्या शतकामध्ये माझ्या मताने 2-3च खरे असे व्यक्ती होऊन गेले. एक म्हणजे शेठ वालचंद हिराचंद होते, त्यांनी काय नाही केलं, आणि दुसरे ब्रिजमोहनलाल मुंजाल होते, त्यांनी एका फील्डमध्ये काम केलं पण जबरदस्त काम केलं. तर आपल्याला हे सुनीलजींनी हे सुंदर पुस्तक आपल्याला बनवून दिलं आहे मराठीमध्ये. आपल्यापैकी बहुतेक लोक मराठी वाचतात की नाही हा प्रश्न आहे, परंतु जे वाचतात त्यांनी जरूर हे वाचायला पाहिजे असं मला वाटतं. याच्यातनं त्यांच्या आयुष्याबद्दल त्यांच्याबद्दल आपल्याला फार काही शिकायला मिळेल. तर मला फार आनंद झाला आहे की मला यांनी आज बोलावलं इथं बोला म्हणून, आणि माझ्या मनात ब्रिजमोहनजीबद्दल फार आदर आहे. आणि मी आपल्याला हे सांगू इच्छितो की या पुस्तकात तुम्हाला त्यांच्या व्यक्तिमत्वाची सुंदर झलक दिसेल.
Thank you so much, sir. And Namita, some Shark Tank advice in Marathi.
अंधो में कान्हा राजा. तर शार्क टँकवर काय होतं की कोणालाच मराठी नाही येत, सगळ्यांना फक्त एक लँग्वेज येते, हिंदी आणि ॲट मोस्ट इंग्लिश. तर मी गुजरातीमध्ये एकदम असं बिंदास बोलते. मराठी जितकी पण थोडी ओडी मराठी येते, मी एकदम असं बिंदास लय भारी झकास काही ना काही बोलत असते मी. पण आता ह्यांचं मराठी ऐकून इतकं शुद्ध आणि इतकं म्हणजे आय डोंट नो काय वर्ड यूज करू, पण इतकं सुरेख मराठी ऐकून मला आता मराठीत बोलायची खूपच लाज वाटते.
पण त्यांनी ते सांगितलं ते खूप महत्त्वाचं आहे की रिजनल लँग्वेजेस या माध्यम लाईक रिस्पेक्ट मिळणं खूप जरुरी आहे, खूप गरजेचं आहे. आणि हा फॉरम त्याच्यासाठी इम्पॉर्टंट आहे आणि त्याच्यामुळे मला इथे येऊन खूप आनंद झाला. आणि ऑफकोर्स हे सगळे माझे मित्र आहेत आणि खूपच चांगलं इथे डिस्कशन केला. Parikshit, you are nodding your head, but you don't understand a word of what I'm saying.
Mr. Firodia said
I just love that. We shall translate it for you later.
Okay, Mr. Bajaj, any final words in
Hello.
Marathi?
Hello, can I ask a question? The last one?
Okay, quickly, yeah,
Yeah.
please. And if you can, yeah, ma'am, you can as well, but please, I request if you can stand,
Sir,
otherwise
sir.
it's fine.
Sir.
Yeah.
So, of course.
First thing, thank you for this enlightening talk which I am attending. I am Jayashree. Now, all of us here would know that Pune was a city of cycles at one time. And we grew up with cycles. And my family had 2 cycles, and those cycles were a luxury. One lady cycle on my name, but users were my brothers. I mean, that was one thing. Now, another person put up, my main question is, artificial intelligence is taking the world by a storm. We have come to a point of automated cars, automated everything. Even my tongue might get automated. So, I want to know people are fearing unemployment. So, how do you industrialists feel about this? And of course, I'm a great fan of Namita. So, thanks for her woman power. But I want to see how will we as a nation deal with unemployment, because the youth are getting stressed out because of this.
Right. Very important question, and sir, we'll take your question as well, and then.
Sir.
Yeah.
मी डॉक्टर संजय आव्हाळे. हॅलो.
Yeah. Please stand in.
Hello.
मी डॉक्टर संजय आव्हाळे. आता सरांनी मराठीत बोलल्यामुळे मलाही मराठीत माझं हार्टबीट कमी झालं. तर माझा एक नॅनो मेगा म्हणून असा एक इंटरनॅशनल दर्जाचा प्रकल्प आहे, ज्याच्यामध्ये मुलांना सहज सुलभ स्वस्त आणि स्वास्थ्यवर्धक पद्धतीने मुलांना घरात खेळता येईल आणि कार्टून कॉम्प्युटर मोबाईल पासून 100% ते दूर जाऊ शकतील अशी त्याच्यामध्ये शास्त्रज्ञ आहे. परवा नीरज बजाज सरांनी UTT घेतलेली आहे, तर मी बजाज सरांना त्यांच्याकडून ईमेल त्यांचा मिळावा म्हणून आलो होतो. मी लीडर आणि फीडर यांचा कॉन्टॅक्ट होत नाही.
Keep it short. Yeah, sir.
Yeah. So, good evening. My question is about education. You know, I am a product of COEP. As Mr. Bajaj is, I did mechanical. My son just passed out of mechanical, and the syllabus, what I see after 20 plus years, has not much changed. So, unless and until we do something at the grassroots level, we can't expect miracles. So probably you are the influential people who can request or guide or ask the people who design courses and other things, because next 10 years are India and India only.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's respond.
Let's get some response. I can talk about the education if you like. So we have set up a university actually in my father's name, which is now considered the most innovative university in India with the highest experiential curriculum in the world. What we do every year is that the entire curriculum, and so the university is only 10 years old, by the way. The entire curriculum is reviewed every year. No, let me correct myself. 30% of the entire curriculum is reviewed every year. So every 3 years, it is completely refreshed. In this period, we've already changed the complete curriculum 3 times over within 10 years. And I think that's what more and more education system needs to do, because there's a lot of new information, new education available to us, but very often we don't shed the old one, which has become self-evident. So I think, by the way, the new education policy of India is fantastic. If we can implement it as it is designed, and I'm saying if, because implementation is a state subject. Every state will implement on their own, and therefore it's likely to be different and patchy. I just hope we can create some kind of a common platform to share ideas to implement this. That itself will also teach us how do you adopt technology, how do you use technology, and by the way, all of you are right. Many of the jobs get lost. But the reason we are not panicked about it, it will create many, many new opportunities. It will create more new opportunities than will get extinguished.
Right. Sanjiv, the question about AI.
Yeah, but let me just talk about CUAP. Prior to that, so we are both mechanical engineers, and the university, as you may know, has become autonomous only recently. And they are in the process of reviewing their curriculum. And as Sunil was saying, they will on a regular basis review the curriculum going forward as well. In addition, over the last 7 or 8 years, as a group, we've helped renovate and redo the mechanical engineering department, keeping in place the old building style, but modernizing it and making it much more utilitarian from inside. And the university has been kind enough to rename that as the Bajaj School of Mechanical Engineering now at COEP. So hopefully we will see change over there. On AI, it is true, and as Mr. Firodia said also, that a lot of it is still unknown. What seems to be reasonably clear is that simple, repetitive tasks, not manufacturing tasks, but the software tasks, whether as a lawyer, whether as somebody analyzing documents, a researcher, the simple stuff AI will take over. And I think we will start seeing that in the coming years itself. But what's also important to understand is that every few decades, there are certain jobs that become obsolete, but there are certain new jobs that come in. Today, look at the role of influencers in this country. We've got probably a couple of 100,000 influencers who each make a decent amount of money. That job didn't exist 10 years ago. In what way does AI get a lot more capable? Does it get cognitive abilities? Can it become a threat tomorrow to mankind? There's a lot that is being discussed around this today, but answers are still not very clear about that. So I think there is still some factor that is unknown.
You know, Mr. Bajaj, my producer is telling me in my ear that Mr. Bajaj se Marathi mein bulwaiye. Would you like to take a dive at it?
Whatever I wanted to say, Mr. Firodia said it very well.
That's a smart one. Would you like to answer the last question? The one the gentleman asked in Marathi.
संजीव निदान ते तरी मराठीत बोलायला पाहिजे
तू. Okay. All right. So you can do that. I'm sorry, we've run out of time.
If you're winding up, I'd just like to say a couple of thank yous. One is to Pune International Center. Thank you very much for both hosting this and organizing this. To the auditorium and the team here for helping us. My own team that has come with us from Delhi, which has set up many of these events, and lots of friends I see here. Thank you all for making the time and making the effort to be here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thank you very much, Namita, Mr. Firodia, Mr. Munjal, and Mr. Bajaj.
Yes, sir, you may just wait. Let me just thank all the panel members for a very, very interesting panel discussion. It was a thrilling session to see because it covered a lot of diverse topics, right, from entrepreneurship, family business, women empowerment, and so on and so forth. I would also say that the Marathi version of the book, Hero Ki Yashogatha, would see the very similar success as what has been seen by the English and the Hindi version of the book. So thank you everybody for the panel discussion. I would request the panelists to kindly take up the seat in the audience, except for Mr. Sunil Munjal ji, because people may want your signature on the book. So I request everybody to take the place on the audience. Let me quickly complete the. Yeah, I'll do that.
quickly, I'll give the vote of thanks as we come to the end of the event. So let me thank the teams of PIC and Hero Enterprise, Mr. Abhay Vaidya, Director PIC, Prashant Girvane, Geeta Madam for a special mention, Mr. Ajay Arora, Chetan Kohli and Anshul Gupta of Hero Group needs a special mention too. Thanks to Yashada for excellent support and thank you everybody in the audience. I would request Mr. Sunil Munjal to be available for signing if it's required. And for everybody in the audience, high tea is arranged outside. Kindly have it and you are free to take signatures on your book purchase. Sunil sir is going to be here around. Thank you.